This is PsychBoost, helping you with your psychology qualification, one video at a time. This video is on psychological problems, and in this 20-second video we'll be covering depression. The very kind support of students and teachers who donate on Patreon help me help you by continuing to make these videos and resources. Very big thank you for your help, guys. To join them, follow the link. For everyone, you might want to check out the free worksheet for this video and the quiz. So here are the terms on the AQA GCSE specification we're going to cover in this video. As we go through the video, they're going to be in red text and you need to be able to respond to questions on all of this. So let's start by getting the definition of depression right, starting with what we would call unipolar depression. This is when someone's been clinically diagnosed after a long period of low mood, in combination with other symptoms like reduced energy, low self-confidence, and sleep disturbance. There's also bipolar depression. So, as well as having the symptoms of unipolar depression, there are periods of excessively high mood known as mania. People in this manic phase will have high energy, feel very positive and productive, and generally feel excited. They'll talk quickly and make impulsive decisions that they might not have thought through. The depressive and manic phases can last for a few weeks or even months. Sadness, however, is not a mental health problem. It's a normal human response to negative life events. It's temporary, and while unpleasant, people are able to continue to function while experiencing sadness. So we need to really clearly define the difference between these three terms. So unipolar is just abnormally low moods, while bipolar is both abnormally low moods and abnormally high moods. But sadness is a shared and normal human emotion. If someone was to be diagnosed with unipolar depression, the clinician may use a book called the International Classification of Diseases. This is a medical tool listing symptoms. The psychiatrist will match the patient's experience to the symptoms listed. The ICD is published by the World Health Organization and is updated in response to changes in scientific knowledge. The current version is version 10, and you can read it for free online by following this link. Section 5 is the part that classifies mental health conditions. So when giving a diagnosis of unipolar depression, the clinician will consider the number of symptoms the patient's had out of 10 over a 2-week period. For a diagnosis, at least one of the symptoms I've put a star next to must be present. If there are fewer than 4 symptoms, the patient's not depressed. 4 would be mild depression, 5 to 6 moderate depression, and 7 or more would be severe depression. So here are the symptoms. Low mood. And this is shown by behavioural aspects like crying and emotional aspects, so sadness. A reduction in energy levels. This is shown by low motivation, noticeable by poor hygiene, diet, or a drop in performance in school or work. A change in sleep patterns, and this could be an increased need for sleep or an inability to sleep. Change in appetite level, so over or under eating. A decrease in self-confidence. The patient might have low self-esteem and report disliking themselves. Other symptoms are poor concentration, guilt, a loss of pleasure, suicidal thoughts, and agitation. So those are the symptoms outlined by the IDC. Let's consider some evaluations. Well, the use of a clearly defined bullet point list helps clinicians be objective in their diagnosis. And the ICD is regularly updated, being informed by the latest scientific knowledge. However, it could be argued that diagnosing according to a bullet point list reduces the ability of clinicians to use their own judgment in diagnosis. Also, the IDC is an international guide. However, as mental health conditions are experienced differently depending on cultural background, the symptoms may not apply to everyone. Now we defined what depression is, let's look at the competing theories on what causes depression. Firstly, the biological approach. Being biological, it considers the physical causes, so brain structure, neurotransmitters, and hormones. All of those factors can be influenced by genes or physical causes like diet and drug use. Taking this approach is considering the influence of nature. This suggests that people inherit depression in their DNA. The genotype then, those genes that code for biological features, so levels of neurotransmitters, which are the phenotype. An imbalance, so too much or too little of neurotransmitters coded for by genes, then can disrupt the normal brain's functioning. One important neurotransmitter that's been identified as a mood regulator is serotonin. Low levels of serotonin is thought to cause the symptoms of persistent low mood in people with depression. In evaluating the biological theories of depression, we can point to the success of biological treatments for depression. The fact that many people can be treated with antidepressants that work on the neurotransmitter systems suggests the underlying theory is valid. However, there are counter-psychological theories that exist that also have effective treatments. That suggests the biological explanation is incomplete, not fully explaining what depression is. So what is that psychological explanation? Well, it suggests that faulty mental processing is the cause of depression. Taking this approach is considering the role of nurture. Our thinking is shaped by our experiences. We develop in childhood as the result of socialization, learning, and the development of schemas. Schemas are mental shortcuts in interpreting the world around us. We have schemas for a range of things: objects, the people around us, and even self-schemas, how we see ourselves. A psychologist called Aaron Beck created the cognitive triad to explain how we develop a harmful set of cognitive biases, a irrational set of negative schemas that alter our way of seeing the world, the future, and ourselves. Another researcher called Seligman suggests that we form a set of negative attributions. We think the causes of failure are internal, so you, not other people, stable, so they're permanent, they can't be fixed, and global, meaning that the failure applies to all situations. These negative attributions result in a sense that we can't improve our lives. So we develop a sense of what Seligman calls learnt helplessness. Positive evaluation of these psychological theories is a success of talking therapies like CBT, suggesting there is validity in the underlying theories. But we can counter taking a fully psychological explanation for depression by pointing to the success of biological treatments in helping people with depression. So now we've discussed two explanations for depression, one biological and one psychological. Now when we're considering treatment, we'll do the same, starting with biological treatments. As depression is thought to be due to an imbalance of neurotransmitters, biological treatments alter that process. Antidepressant medication is often taken as a tablet and can take 1 to 2 weeks before being effective. A patient will be on a course of antidepressants for at least 6 months. If we consider how antidepressants work, we can focus on one main type, SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. SSRIs are really well named. They describe exactly what they do. They select, so they choose only serotonin, and they inhibit, so they slow down its reuptake into the presynaptic neuron. That makes serotonin more effective in the synapse, improving mood. Now, it can be argued that antidepressants don't treat the underlying psychological causes of depression. That might be childhood trauma or faulty cognition. If so, it's a reductionist perspective in treatment. A more holistic treatment plan could be a combination of drugs with CBT, so treating both biological and psychological factors. To evaluate biological therapies then, it might be the only option for people with severe depression. They may just not have the motivation to engage in what is very difficult psychological work with CBT. It's also a much cheaper option than CBT and can be prescribed quickly. But there are side effects like weight gain, nausea, and anxiety. These side effects mean people often stop treatment. Also, antidepressants only seem to be effective in 50 to 65% of people. But that figure improves if combined with CBT. So I've referred to CBT a few times already in this video. It's a treatment that influences what are thought to be the psychological causes of depression. Someone taking a course of cognitive behavioral therapy will be having sessions with a trained psychologist who will be trying to help by changing faulty cognition, so thoughts, and behaviours, so actions. So how does CBT actually improve mental health? The therapist's role is to change irrational thinking to rational thinking. They do this through a process of disputation. There are two types: logical, asking, do these thoughts make sense? And empirical, asking what evidence there are for those irrational thoughts. Behavioural change is also focused on, with homework tasks set, like attending social events. The positive emotional reward for completing those tasks makes it more likely that they will then repeat that behaviour. This process is called behavioural activation. CBT is generally thought to be a more holistic approach to treatment than antidepressants. But that being said, CBT could be argued to be reductionist. as it focuses only on changing present experience, so it ignores past trauma and potential biological factors. To evaluate, psychological treatments are often seen as more empowering for the client, who can feel in control of changing their own thought processes. However, CBT is only effective if continued for some time, and this can be challenging for individuals who are suffering from low motivation as a symptom of depression. We'll finish our explanation of depression with a look at a research study on the effectiveness of CBT as a treatment. Now, people are defined as treatment resistant if after 6 weeks of taking antidepressants, they see no improvement in symptoms. Wiles was interested in investigating if those treatment resistant patients would do better if antidepressant treatment was combined with CBT. So 469 18 to 17-year-old patients, all with treatment resistant depression, were randomly assigned to one of the two conditions. Either just continue with the use of antidepressants or continue the antidepressants alongside a course of CBT. Before the study, all the participants started with a BDI score of 14 or more. The BDI score is a measure of depression. The participants were then followed up at 6 and 12 months and their BDI score remeasured. Wiles found that after 6 months, 46% of the combined CBT and antidepressant group had responded to treatment. They'd shown a 50% or greater reduction in BDI. This was compared to only 22% in the antidepressant-only group. Wiles concluded from these results that a holistic approach to treatment, including both CBT and drug therapy, is the most effective way to help treatment-resistant patients. In positively evaluating Wiles' work, we would say that the study was experimental in nature, demonstrating cause and effect. Much of the previous work was correlational. Wiles carefully controlled the study with a large and diverse sample, meaning the results are highly likely to be valid and generalizable. We can also see this research has real positive implications for people's mental health. Doctors can use this data to help create treatment plans for their patients, helping both the sufferers of mental health but also wider society. However, we can criticize the methodology of Wiles' study in some ways. The participants would be aware that they were receiving additional treatment if they're in the CBT group, meaning they were not blind to the condition they were in. Now, this can raise a problem with demand characteristics. Maybe those getting CBT treatment felt they were helping the researcher by reporting an improvement in symptoms. There are issues of investigator effects, with researchers potentially influencing the results. And finally, the BDI used to measure improvements in depressive symptoms is a self-report measure. This may lack validity as it's very difficult to actually report on your own mental state. So, now we've covered the content, you need to be able to use all that information to actually answer questions. And here are 5 questions I've made up to test your skills. So, pause the video and give them a go. And for those people who support me on Patreon, I've put together an additional bonus video showing you how to answer these properly. For everybody else, thank you for watching, liking, subscribing, and I'll see you in the next and last video on psychological problems, addiction.